We have a number of distinguished guests and not much time, so let me get started. My name is Steve Goldsmith. You've been introduced to me before, and we have distinguished federal and local officials with us. Their names are on the board behind you. So just to get started here, Todd, we're going to start with you. So everybody in the audience has asked you for money, I think. Todd represents the Good Jobs Challenge, American Rescue Funds. He'll be available with checkbook at the end of the meeting, right? So, not to put you on the spot or anything.
Right.
Todd, let's move away from the money for a second. The Department of Commerce has taken a leadership position with respect to the work that almost everybody in the room does today. Discuss with us the principles of what you're trying to accomplish with that money. What changes are you trying to leverage in the way the system works?
Yeah. Well, thanks. That's a great question. There's 4 or 5 things that I always think about. Number one, what we're trying to incent true integrated coalitions of public, private, not-for-profit, education institutions to come together in a real way. Happy to talk about that. Second is really the fundamental partnership, leadership of the private sector in true engagement and commitment. Number 3 is the integration of workforce development and economic development in an intentional way. 4th is equity at the center, very authentically. And 5th is data and outcomes.
Let me ask you about 2 of those really quickly, and we'll get to our other guests. So I was a local official, mayor, deputy mayor for a long time. I was much more actively involved in economic development than workforce development. So how is what you're trying to do, how will that bring together economic development and workforce development more intentionally and deliberately?
Well, the two major programs that I'm responsible for, Build Back Better Regional Challenge, Good Jobs Challenge, are truly about how do you start from either demand, industry strategy, and in particular with the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, how do you start with what your regional assets are, where you want to go as a region, what the strategic industry of the future is, and how do you organize your whole region around that? Workforce, infrastructure, government, et cetera, to bring that together. So it is about starting with demand, regional strategy, and sector approach.
And then as you effectuate that, you used the word data earlier. How would one put together this regional cooperation with a platform of data? When you say data, what type of data and how would the data inform those collaborations?
Well, when I say data, I mean a number of things. I mean, first, that data of where is the demand, where are the jobs really, and active participation in employers in that. So there is real data out there about what the demand for good jobs are in a particular region. I'd say number 2, when you think about data and the drive to have employers be true partners at the table, leaders, this is ours to do together, it's about job commitments. It's about, if you actually train talent, we will hire that talent, not a hypothetical. So there's data and metrics around that. And then finally, it's really about how do we measure success, right? We don't have a truly consistent way to measure job placements, wages, wage gains, social and economic mobility that's shared so that you can see really what best practices are.
Sunae, let's go to you, and I should disclose to the audience, Sunae is my favorite because she brought our book, Growing Fairly, to the back room. So you have the remainder of the time here to...
I haven't had an opportunity to read it, so...
You have an unusual job, at least in terms of my experience, where that you are the mayor's advisor on workforce. You're on the national committees of U.S. Conference of Mayors, but you're also on the Workforce Investment Board. So you've got a role in the mayor's office and on the board. That's unusual. What do you view as the role and voice of the mayor in advocating system collaboration? And, NOLA has 2 finalist applications, so you must be doing something right with respect to collaboration. What's your role?
So regarding our mayor, our proposal was a part of a task force that she put together at the onset of COVID. And so we had economic development, we had climate, but we also had workforce. And in workforce, she divided it in two pieces. The first part was rapid reattachment for those individuals who needed to reattach to employment immediately. And the second one, which our proposal was born out of, was jobs for the future. And so the mayor is the one who had all of those entities at the table, representatives from GNO Inc., from Ganoff, NOLA BA, Ochsner, the whole 9 yards. And so she wanted us to meet to talk about, once we come out of this, what does the future of New Orleans look like? And so we created that framework as to what we wanted New Orleans to look like before the Good Jobs Challenge. So the framework was already established, and we were just waiting for some sort of money to come down the pipeline so we could say, hey, we have the framework here, and it was just a matter of coloring it in. My role as the Director of Workforce Development, I implement the day-to-day processes of workforce development, and my role on the board is to generate and update policy as it affects the day-to-day operations.
So backstage, you also were mentioning that you've been active with respect to organizing wraparound services. And every community out here has, depending on their size, dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of nonprofits doing good work, but often very disjointed way. So how does your job help organize the wraparound services and social services?
So when I started in 2018, the one thing I realized was that the funding we receive can't do everything. Even though I could play a role in childcare, I could play a role in transportation, the whole 9 yards, but that's not our specialty. So we galvanize all the people who work in workforce development and provide services in the city of New Orleans, and we called it resource mapping. And so what we did was everyone plays to their strength. My strength is training and employment. TCA, they have the market on housing and paying people, assisting people with their utility bills. And so when someone comes through either of our doors, we were trying to create a no wrong door approach. If we successfully triage everyone and have a better understanding of what the holes are in their foundation, then we can say, hey, I could assist you with this, which is my strength, and I see you need housing, so I'm going to refer you to TCA, but I also see that you need some work readiness skills, and so I'll refer you to Job 1. And the way that's going to be approached is through a shared database. And with that, we could look to see what services and resources each of us have available to assist that individual from getting from ground zero to point A, but also it's a mechanism to hold each of us accountable, making sure we do what we're supposed to do with the funding that we have received.
Sunae, I think you mentioned in an earlier call, it's terrific that you're the mayor's representative, but you don't work in City Hall. I think you work amongst the folks you serve, right?
Yes, I was about to say, yes, I'm in the ghettois, but I don't know if that was appropriate for this stage, but we're in the heart of where people work, live on this street, the whole 9 yards. So we're right in the thick of things. And so when the pandemic started, we had a line around the corner people needing assistance, homeless people, the whole 9 yards. So we had to shut down the building, but we still service the people virtually. So yes, I am in the heart of it all. I don't have the luxury of City Hall.
Yeah, you don't lack much enthusiasm, I think. It's contagious. Let's go to Chuck. Now, I also warn the audience about Chuck a little bit. He told me backstage, he runs this nonprofit. He's well thought of by the city, but he's also a pastor, and my ability to actually stop him from speaking is going to be very limited. So, are you ready for your sermon?
I'm ready, and I'm going to close 3 or 4 times. How about that?
So, Chuck, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Run a highly well-respected nonprofit, and I've got a couple questions for you, and then I'm going to come back to our other panelists on the role of employers. But from your perspective, you were saying that resilience isn't just a word in New Orleans, right? It's a matter of survival. So talk to us about how you're threading survival, resilience, job opportunities with your training program.
Sure. First and foremost, I'm glad to be on the panel, but we are extremely happy to be designated as the city's national disaster resilience operator. So as I mentioned to Stephen earlier, disaster and resiliency and sustainability it's not buzzwords for us. I mean, we have, as you know, that we're losing our coastline rapidly every day. We have weather events that happen all the time. So our role is to make sure that we are are creating that future workforce for those jobs. We know, we believe by the research says that the climate action jobs are the future jobs. So our jobs is to make sure that we train the future employers of our city to be part of their own solution. What does that really mean? That means that we are going into underserved communities. We're partnering with churches of color. We're partnering with returning citizen organizations to make sure that we touch our whole city, that our whole city can be part of the solution. As we think about resiliency and as we think about sustainability, as it relates to work, we also focus on small business development. And so we're at a point where we are linking our individuals for the workforce around resiliency and green infrastructure to businesses that are also focused on resiliency and green infrastructure. I think that at the end of the day, it is a matter of life and death for us, or survival is probably the better word. So as we think about holistic training and things we're doing, we partner with Sunae, we partner with the city as it relates to the things they have to offer. She talked about the macro piece. But micro, from a micro perspective, we have in-house behavioral therapists, we have in-house coaches, we have in-house job placement people. So we try to remove every barrier that we need to remove. We look at the barriers. What are your barriers to success, to finishing our program? And our job is to remove barriers to make sure people can be successful in the workforce. And we have decided that no man's an island. So we have to figure out an army that's strong at all fronts is strong in none. So we have decided as a nonprofit, as an organization, to focus on sustainability and resilience and climate action jobs of the future. I serve on the Mayor's Climate Action Equity Task Force to make sure as we do this climate action plan the city has, that is equitable, that is inclusive, as we think about solar, as we think about wind, as we think about green infrastructure, those jobs, those opportunities, that they are inclusive in people of color, or people, BIPOC businesses and people of color, and everyone can capitalize. But one thing I will share, Stephen, is that we've had a tendency in our city, and I'll say this, and I hope nobody gets offended, that we have tendency in our city for economic growth and opportunity. But usually it does not help the people on the corner. It doesn't help the persons in the underserved communities. And what the answer is that, you know what? We would have hired you. You could have had this contract. You could have had this job, but you're not prepared. Sunae and myself are working hard to take that excuse off the table and make sure that we're preparing people for those jobs in advance.
So, Chuck, all right. Appropriate applause, I'd say.
Amen.
No, that's what they're supposed to say, I think. Chuck, one more question. Think about the feeder system for labor workers of the future, underserved communities, justice-involved folks. And you got a training program and a major initiative around an important goal of resilience. How do you get those folks, the underserved folks, into your pipeline for training?
Sure, it is. First and foremost, I encourage everyone to meet people where they are. We can't expect people to meet us where we are. We have to go where they are. And we go to Black churches. We partner with organizations that's on the ground. The Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is one of our partners. We believe in getting out to the communities. And we also, Stephen, one of the things that we believe in also is you go to the trusted spaces in the community, especially in underserved communities. Because you walk in those spaces, they can see a fraud. They can see if you're real or not. So you link to the folks like the pastors that people trust. Link to the folks that are in the community, the elders, the cultural bearers. Those are the folks that we're tapping into to make sure. We even have a program where they're even going to the prisons and realizing what are the trades they're learning in the prison that's transferable for resiliency and sustainability when they get out. And it's a pipeline that leads them to us. And we're very proud that we meet people where they are, and we help to help them leave them better than we found them.
So last question to you, and then the last couple of minutes we'll divide it among our other two panelists. Chuck, in 45 seconds, what do you want from local government or federal government that would make you better, make the results better?
What I would love one for local and federal government, and I see it happening locally, but on the federal level also, is to change the paradigm, to change the narrative, to get out of the box, to look at what it really takes, the cost it takes to change people's thought processes, the thoughts that what does it cost to change the barriers? Investing in those barrier changes, not just saying, okay, I got a group of people here that you need to train. No, I got a group of people who you need to train, but I know they got neuronal gossip in their minds about what has happened in their past, what they've been through. So we have to start with the holistic person, with holistic care, and the fun, holistic support of individuals if we want to be successful. We got to stop checking boxes, Stephen, and start digging into and going deeper with people.
Start with people.
Okay, Sunae, no pressure, but we've had 2 applause lines, and they both have been Chuck's. So there's a lot of inequity in the system, right? And some of that is contributed by employers and the way they hire, you know, maybe requiring too much in terms of degrees, some in terms of kind of overt or inadvertent bias against workers of the type that Chuck has mentioned. So what do you want from employers in your community? And what does the mayor use her voice to advocate in terms of changing policies for employers that would further this pipeline for folks who are not well served today?
So what I would like for employers, and I speak from the mayor's perspective, is to open your mind and understand that in 2050, the majority of the people who are going to be in the workforce and consumers are going to be people of color. And so if you're really for filling your vacancies and having the talent and the skills that you need, it starts today. And so so I wanted to say something, if you don't mind. You know, an issue that we're having, we have to start with our educational system, and there's inequalities right there. And so you have these Black and brown people who are graduating from high schools that, when you assess them for those high wage, high demand jobs, they're not reading, writing, or doing math at the 8th grade level. So I've been working with employers and our training providers to contextualize the training, meaning that they're going to embed reading, writing, and the math computation in the technical skills. And so that's the only way we're going to build more equitable talent pipeline, because right now it's just not there. Our school system, not to say something needed to happen, but I think we're on the other side of that right now. And so what do we do from a workforce perspective, right? We have the employers at the table telling us what it is that they need from their workforce. We have the mayor and her people listening, and we're bringing at the table the training providers to make sure that we're doing exactly, embedding those processes and procedures from the employer perspective into the work that we do. So the only way this works is if we work together. If we continue working the way that we've worked in the past in silos, we're going to be right here on this panel 50 years from now having the same conversation. And I don't want my daughter, who's right now 14 years old, to be sitting in my seat wondering how she's going to combat or mitigate the inequalities that exist for Black and brown people. These programs were started 50 years ago. We're 50 years later, we're still having the same conversation. So we need employers to know that the workforce of the future are the Black and brown people.
Thank you very much. All right, Todd, help close here a little bit. You've had a distinguished background in the private sector. You worked for Gerald Terchavian, in the work that many folks do in the audience. You're now an important federal official. How do we create more scale at a system level, right? How do we take the good work you've just heard about, the initiatives you're doing, but create more opportunity for more people? What are the pieces of that puzzle that will create opportunity for more?
Well, I think one of the things I want to say about this employer question is it's going to take employers being at these tables. It's going to take employers changing their mindset so that they really think this work is ours collectively to do in a true partnership. Not, you guys do that over there and we'll support you, but rather we're really in this together, shifting from a transactional approach to hiring to a real partnership approach to hiring. And that mentality shift has to happen along with practice change, along with making commitments to hire. Like, all of that is critical. And then the other thing I would add to that is, like, I've lived my life, as you say, in the private sector, in the not-for-profit sector, in the federal government now. These organizations are all in silos. They speak different languages, they move at different paces, and it's really very hard to break that structure, that routine, the way that power is shared or not shared. And so I think we have to do something really intentional to break that routine. We need to bring parties together, not in what I call the Noah's Ark approach to coalition building. We get two of everybody, we put them on a piece of paper and we check the box, but rather, really bringing coalitions together that have true shared governance, that have real voices of diverse people at the table, and shift the power sharing dynamic so that we're truly doing this together.
Terrific. Please help me thank our panelists for their great presentations today. Thank you very much.